that topic. So welcome to episode 30 of the Danso Pitch podcast. Let's go. The big 3-0, guys. We're here. Let's work. Crazy ass shit going on. But right now, we're about to touch on a very important topic. For those tuning in right now from any audio platform or YouTube, we got the presidential election going on right now. By the time you probably listen to this, we hope that the right candidate is chosen. But I digress. So we wanted to also touch this episode. Oh wait, let me introduce you guys first. Ramy and Daniel, how you guys doing? Introduce yourselves to the audience, please.
What's up, everybody? Ramy here, co-host of Danso Pitch. You've heard me enough. Chief Marketing Officer here, and good friend of my guy Charles and Daniel. So it's always a good time to be on these. Just feels like, we giving knowledge, but having a good time while doing it at the same time.
I agree.
That's right, man. It's always a pleasure being on these episodes. How you guys doing? I'm Daniel, COO of Danso Financial Group. The big 3-0, as Charles said, man. It's crazy how we're like a year and a half in this, and we're already at episode 30. So it's a very exciting episode we have planned for you guys. So let's get it started, Charles.
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of people have been hitting us up with questions like, oh, why should I be paying attention to the presidential elections or the candidates right now? How do you guys keep making posts about presidential election affecting the stock market? So that's what we kind of wanted to highlight today for this episode. We first want to highlight in terms of what each policy the current candidates are. If you don't know, if you've been living under a rock, that is Joseph R. Biden and Donald J. Trump, or Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Those are the candidates right now running for president. So we want to first give you a quick history as to historically since 1984, the stock market has made the correct presidential elections. I know it sounds crazy for the audience listening in right now, but the stock market actually has made its correct predictions. Usually in the months leading up to the election, if the stock market is actually down, which it has been, I think the S&P 500 fell 0.04% between July 31st and October 31st. So in that 3-month period, 3-month period, basically, the stock market has been not doing as well. So that usually means the president, I guess, running thing, which is Joe Biden at this point, would be the individual that would actually end up winning the presidential candidacy. Now, the alternative is if the stock market was steady or was at a positive note, then Trump would actually remain in power. So right now, the market actually has Joseph Biden winning the presidential candidacy. Gentlemen, your thoughts on that?
And that's a very interesting scope to look at it from, because when you think about it, on average, like just as you said, if the markets were generally doing well leading up into the election, it would predict that the incumbent party would win. If we look at the Obama administration, on average, the markets performed better when Obama was in between, before the 2012 election. The stock market was doing well, and then it predicted the outcome of him winning. So just going off of that basis to what you're saying is, I could definitely see, because I've seen that within my generation as proof enough, going back to 1984. Obviously, we weren't born yet, but looking at that scope, that is it's an interesting predictor to kind of look at when we see how this election is playing out right now before our eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's very interesting to know. I mean, what we're doing here is using past data, historical trends, and in the stock market, that's called technical analysis. When you use, past data to predict the movement of the market. So if we're using past elections, what are we on? 43 elections of presidents by now? But
46.
46. I'm a little behind the times there, my bad. But by looking at the past data, we're able to predict that. But what's interesting is if you look at this drop, you said 0.04%. That's like barely the tiniest margin of downturn in the market. So, and look at how close the election has been so far, like where every single vote matters, and it might come down to something as simple as 0.04 or less than 1% of a difference in votes that's going to swing this election. So not only is it super close in real life, the market is just barely down. So usually we'd get a stronger feel, but in this case, it's just a slight edge for Biden if we're using the technical analysis post-election, leading up to election day.
Exactly. I mean, that's just a kind of, that was an interesting take that you mentioned, Ramy, in terms of the fact that that drop was so small, but ironically, that's how close the candidates are right now between Biden and Trump. That's that small margin. Though Biden is winning in terms of like electoral votes by a good enough margin, he still right now is still trying to secure the 270 that's needed to win. And if you look at the states, a lot of the states that originally were red or Republican based now are either overturning to Democrats, or Biden is having a tough battle with Trump in those usually red states that usually, if this was like back like 4 years ago, Trump would have easily swept by now. So I think that's just an interesting take. Another thing that a lot of analysts, Wall Street analysts, particularly Goldman Sachs, predict is the Democrats actually winning the House and the Senate. And much like that race of presidency, the Senate is so close. I think right now it's pretty much deadlocked. I think it's like pretty much tied right now, like 47 or 48 senators basically are basically right now in the run. The majority is obviously 51. So for those that, again, by the time this episode probably drops, you'll probably know who won the House and who also won the Senate. So that's also important to note. The reason being is stimulus packages will probably get passed with the Democrats. Also, healthcare. That's important. Republicans feel like you have to probably pay more on a premium for your healthcare, which is important. Democrats are trying to help you basically save your money. Now, we're not saying that. For those listening, we're not supporting the Democrats. We're saying like, oh, like go Democrat. We're just giving you each person's policies, what each person believes in, and what each person feels like if they were to be in power, what they can do. So basically, if Biden was to win right now, and the Senate won by Republicans, Biden can't push shit, and it's gonna be a hard time for him trying to get the stimulus deal passed, which would actually increase the stock market, because with that, a lot more people will spend, a lot more people will invest their money into the market, which will obviously boost the market. If not, then it's gonna be a tough couple months ahead. That's what I wanted to share. Gentlemen, you guys have any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see that a Democratic sweep would had such a positive impact on the stock market, given Biden's plans for tax reform on corporate taxes, and also just some of his other policies that at first glance, from a headline risk, it looks like it could downturn the market. But ultimately, as you said, with the stimulus packages being issued and the reforms with healthcare and all of the companies that will benefit from that, of course, including renewable energy and the infrastructure companies, all of those companies will boost ultimately. But quite frankly, it's also an interesting point historically that the stock market generally has had a high return. According to LPL Financial, the stock market has had a higher return when there was a Democratic president and it was a split Congress, where either the House had Republic or vice versa. It was the Democrats that had the House and the Senate was controlled by the Republicans. The stock market tended to perform really well. I mean, I can just only go off of how the Obama administration performed, that kind of jump-started the economic boom that we had between the 2012 and 2016. The Congress was a split Congress, and it was a Democratic president. But that's one example. We can go back through history and see how that plays out. But to your point, Charles, yeah, I think that this especially given the times that we're in, the coronavirus pandemic. There's a lot of other crazy things going on, the wildfires in the West, and all this environmental issues that are just coming to the forefront. The times that we're in definitely reflect what could be positive outcome for the stock market with this new administration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and talking about the split Congress, I mean, Obama was able, during the Obama administration, he was able to, enact certain major legislation such as Obamacare, but he didn't get to do a lot of the things that he was intending to do because of the split Congress. So I think it works both ways. I think it works for fairness and equality to have the Senate as one and the House as another dominant, one party dominating. But at the end of the day, in a two-party system that we are here now in the United States, this bipartisanship, unfortunately, the way politics works is very party-based. People vote along party lines. So most of the time, when you have a split Congress, you're just not able to enact some of the things you're able to do just off pure politics. So I feel if we were to have both parties, united Congress under one president, there would be more forward momentum. And according to what you were saying, Charles, Goldman Sachs, the blue wave, blue is the color of the Democratic Party. If they were to take control of both the Senate and the House, and President Biden and President-elect would be Biden, then he would be able to move forward with a lot of his initiatives, and that actually would be a boost to the market, just knowing that the president and the Congress are going to actually be able to work together. So I think it works both ways, but at the end of the day, I think a united Congress might be more beneficial, especially in a time like now when people are demanding such progressive changes, like legalizing marijuana, criminal reform, all these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And my stance on that is absolutely, in this time, that's exactly what we need. Just going off of history, that's what we've seen that works. But yeah, as you said, it works both ways, because we've just had this duality when it comes to Congress, and nothing can really get pushed. So I believe, yes, in this instance, the checks and balances of Republican versus Democratic, I feel now that system hasn't been upheld, even though it's in place. So having the Democratic Party within Congress and having a Democratic president, we can get a lot of things done, and in terms of the reform, and not have such a delay in terms of what could have been done during the Obama administration, as you said.
And to further that point, we also, something I really want to highlight about the bipartisan and who takes control of the Congress and the Senate, the House and the Senate, we got to remember we've been in the middle of this pandemic crisis for most of 2020, if not all of 2020, and stimulus packages have been the talk of Congress for a long time. And because of party politics and the House and the Senate being split, we often find ourselves one party pitching a package, the other side shutting it down, the other side pitching a reform package, the other side shutting it down. And this might be theory and stuff, but at the end of the day, we have to think that one party wants to take credit for their package being passed, because that will look better historically. That'll be an accolade on their side. So right now, we only got that one stimulus package. There's been talks for months of a second, and where's it been? Nowhere. Whether that, not to put blame on anywhere, it just hasn't happened. But I think once these elections settle down, the new president takes over, I'm pretty sure that one of the first and foremost things they're going to want to do, especially if the Congress is no longer split, is they're going to pass a stimulus package just to say, we did this, we are better than the other. I feel like it's going to go that way.
Yeah, like you said, there's just such a big split between Republicans and Democrats right now. So it's just more so one wants to hold the stimulus, the other feels like, I want to push the stimulus to take the credit for. But at the end of the day, from an investment standpoint, we would actually want the stimulus to be passed, because
Yes.
again, the stimulus isn't just $1,200. You also have to remember there's small business loans involved in that. So a lot of small businesses, like example, if you have a small business on Shopify or Amazon, that is a company you want to look at, because of the fact, again, a lot of this funding will get passed through those companies that you have listed on those major corporations, so to speak. Another thing would be, again, with the 1,200, that would give you more of a leeway to invest some more money into the market. So that always gives a positive outlook for the market. We also want to talk, just diving into that as I'm staying on that, is what are the exact policies of each candidate? I think a lot of people, and how that affects the market. I think a lot of people just look at Trump and are like, oh, Trump is whatever, he's just racist, this and that. Which he is. We all agree with that. But the thing is, again, the reason why Wall Street backs him, the reason why he gets backing from a lot of these corporations, is because of the fact he does a lot of tax cuts, corporate tax cuts. But I first want to highlight, since he is the president, I first want to highlight Joe Biden and what his thinking is, and how that could potentially give an investor looking to get into stocks in the stock market, already invested in stocks, to kind of look at the specific stocks in the next coming months or weeks ahead. So the first thing is, as Daniel mentioned, is next era energy. Biden proposed a $700 billion renewable energy plan centered around environmentalism. Basically, like as Daniel had mentioned, and Daniel, you could speak more to this as well, is again, for anybody that's looking to basically invest in the market, should Biden win, or even if Biden doesn't win, to prospect it, is next era energy. That's on the stock market, that's on the stock exchange, however you want to utilize that.
What's
that's
the ticker for the people?
Oh, it's NEE, capital NEE. That is what you want to look at. It's called next era energy, and you want to look at any renewable energy company on the stock market if Biden is basically president. The reason being is because, again, that's one of his policies. One of the main focus on the policies is the environment, where to have renewable energy to basically obviously cancel out air pollution, whatever the case is, and so forth. The next one is cannabis. We've been talking about cannabis. I've been preaching cannabis for months upon end, and for those that follow me, I've been talking about it since the beginning of the year. Daniel mentioned it. Again, you see the states basically now making it legal for recreational use as well, not just medical. So I think that's important, because again, the government is going to want to get a tax out of it, which means that there are going to be more businesses as a result in the states, which is very important outside of just Canada. So if you've been paying attention to Aurora Cannabis, any of those, any stock tickers, they've probably been jumping pretty high in the last couple of days because of the fact that, again, it's becoming legal. I presume, I think in the next 2 years, pretty much 90% will probably, in the states, will probably have recreational use, basically legalize it in the various 50 states. So I think that's just important as an investor, because of the fact, again, that's just money you can make on the market. And right now, as it's cheap, because of the fact it took a hit during Corona, I think this is the best time to buy stocks, right, gentlemen? Is because of the fact, again, you can buy cheap, and as it grows, so does your money. Your thoughts on that, Ramy?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I know definitely firsthand about the cannabis market, where I've been invested in for like maybe 2-3 years now. When that hype, there was that year where it was really hype, and then it popped, the bubble popped, and it's been down for a while. But now that it's heavy on the news, it's the center of a lot of political campaigns, and people are getting elected that support this, it's moving more towards that. And a couple of states in the last just 24 48 hours announced it. New Jersey, what state
Nevada.
Was that? Nevada. So all these places, like,
Oregon was moving coke, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, that was a hard.
Yeah, we won't talk about
that. But we're not talking rocket science here. Like, what all we're saying is, you follow, these president-elects or hopefuls have been talking about certain commodities, certain elements that affect the economy for a long time. It's probably been stagnant because nobody knew which is going to win, which side is going to win. But now, once you see, you do want to, how do I say it? You want to have exposure to the winning side. So if you know that one candidate who you think is going to win the election is heavily backing, the legalization of marijuana, for example, you would want to go invest in cannabis companies to be exposed to the upside of that. And all I mean is by owning shares of it. So if you haven't been in it before, in that sector, for example, now's a good time. It's still relatively cheap compared to where it was a few years ago, and it can only take off from there. And if you look at Donald Trump's presidency, a lot when he was running, his platform was heavily, make America great again, but a lot of that was centered around making American-based companies more profitable, giving them the edge over foreign companies. And so the market did really well under him, mainly because if you expose yourself to the market before he got elected, you'd be cashing out right now. Right. Because he was centered around economic upside of domestic companies. So exactly. If you just listen to what they're saying and pick your side of who you think is going to win, or invest in both sides, you'll probably end up on top. So that's why we're just listing some of these sectors now.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think just to name one company that I've personally invested in is Aurora Cannabis Inc. They last time I checked were actually up from, for like, if you look at the month and just look at their track record. So, I mean, it's rising. And of course, states like New Jersey just passed their law for, decriminalization and legalization of marijuana. So other states will follow suit. I heard something like New York is working on having that pushed through. So this is happening. And the companies that are making, more cannabis-related products are cashing in, and this is definitely the time to cash in on it as well. Because when these things hit like, 15 a share in a few years, that's going to be a lot of money. That's going to be a lot of equity in these companies. So just to put that out there as an example, what these two gentlemen articulated, the cannabis industry is definitely booming, and it's going to be on the rise.
Yeah. And again, another way to look at it, if you're like, I don't want to really read through every candidate's policy. Another way is you just look at how one person is thinking over the other. So basically, Joe Biden is more forward thinking. So you want to look at companies like Tesla because it's electric vehicles, and he backs that. And you see states, like California, which are trying to go all electric in the next 3 years. So that's just important to know. Usually when one state does it, the others follow. Obviously, you see different companies like Toyota, Honda, all these people just basically combining to build electric vehicles, following the model of Tesla. So that's just a company you want to look at. Alternatively, also, you also want to look at gold, because Biden is expensive. So a lot of this proposals he's pushing out, that's probably going to devalue the dollar because of the fact he's going to be spending a lot. So you want to look at something that kind of offsets that, which is always gold. Gold is always a good commodity to basically pursue if the value of the dollar is not as high. So that's just something to look at. And also, you want to look at healthcare. Obviously, Biden follows the Obama platform of healthcare for everybody, in the sense of not free, but in the sense of affordable. So you want to look at companies like United Healthcare. That's one company that can, you can invest in the stock market that allows you to basically, if Biden should win or even prospect to win, that would always help out. Alternatively, let's say Trump somehow pulls this shit out. We'll keep our personal thoughts to ourselves, but a lot of companies he looks at is corporations like Ramy mentioned. So if like Bank of America, JP Morgan, Amazon, Walmart, all these companies, ironically, even though Trump may not like Bezos and the rest of them, he actually helps their company because of the fact he gives such great corporate tax cuts. So a lot of these companies get more revenue, and more revenue in a company means their stock price goes up because they have more shares they could distribute, and they have more revenue, just free cash flow they can utilize to just get more products out, or whatever the case they're trying to brand. So that's just something you can note. Also, the military. Trump always backs the military, so we're going to look at any military stock. I think the main military stock is what, Lockheed Martin or whatever, however you pronounce that.
Lockheed Martin.
Lockheed,
Sorry, I pronounced it right. Yeah, Lockheed Martin. That's the stock you want to look at because of the fact that, again, Trump, like Ramy mentioned, make America great. So he basically, in his version, is the military is great. So
right.
or his party thinks that. So that's something that and we all think that, obviously, but the way they look at it is like give more funding for the military. Also, one of the main things Trump also follows is oil. He actually still stays in the olden ways because of the fact, obviously, more cars are moving to electric, but he still believes that basically gas-fueled cars are basically the way to go right now. So obviously, ExxonMobil is a company to look at. If you haven't, I still recommend looking at it because Trump is still in power till January. So you can still make some profitability off of that, regardless of whether he's still in office or whether he's out. So those are companies to also look at. But again, and kind of want to bring you guys in. The reason why we want to highlight these companies for you guys is, as we mentioned, you don't necessarily have to agree with each candidate. But if you are an investor in the market, you want to always diversify your money. You want to find ways to diversify your portfolio in the stock market. So regardless of, again, whether you agree with Trump, Biden, whoever the case is, you want to just follow what they're following, what they're trending towards, what their party is trending to. This is why the Senate is also important, because of the fact they give a lot of their approvals for whoever's in power. So let's say Trump was to win somehow and then the Democrats won the Senate and the House, Trump will have a hard time, and vice versa. So that also doesn't allow a lot of policies to get pushed. So let's say Biden wants to push a new, I think he had the Biden care plan or something he was thinking about building off of the Obamacare plan. So let's say Mitch McConnell and the rest of them are like, no, we're not pushing that deal. Well, a lot of people are going to be paying very high premiums in the months to come. So I think that's very important to note. This is why elections are so important. This is why voting is so important. I don't care that the voting is already passed. If you voted, congratulations. If you haven't, in the next 2 years, I think when the governor or whoever the 2-year election for the local level, vote. Another 4 years, vote, because again, that also impacts the stock market, the money that you're investing your money into, your 401ks. That's also important because again, 401ks are also deal with what the presidential candidate in power basically distributes to companies. So again, like if Biden or let's say is taking a high tax cut from JP Morgan, just an example, or Bank of America, your 401k plan may not be as distributed as highly as someone like Trump, who may, give a lot of huge tax cuts. So that's just something to pay attention to. Just want to kind of give you guys an idea. I'm not saying that's what each candidate actually follows, but just use an example. Gentlemen, your thoughts?
Yeah, I love the breakdown of just, objectively looking at how both plans can deliver these results, because when you look at your own personal finances, you're going to have to do a little bit of an inventory check. Like, you're going to have to look at your situation, look at your 401k, look at your Roth IRAs, look at the investments you have, and look at the markets, and then determine, okay, based on this, and this is the information, and this could be the outcome, what do I need to do now to prepare? There have been policies around student loans, which is like its own thing, but that also has an effect too if those laws get passed, okay? Because money saved now, let's say you have $5,000 saved to pay off loans that have been deferred on interest, but come January, that might not be the case. But should Biden win, he has plans to, if depending on your situation, his plans will alleviate what you may pay. You may not have to pay that $5K. You may only have to pay $2,000, and that $3K can go to investments. So, you have to like play this little pros and cons when you're weighing the outcome of how, these plans will pan out. And like you said, it also depends on Congress, because, Biden could win, but he won't have control of Congress. Vice versa, Trump could win and he might not have Congress behind his back either. So it all depends on how things pan out, and then you adjust your personal finances accordingly.
Ramy, anything?
I got no hot takes on this one.
No, that's perfect. I think for us, I think that's a good enough breakdown. We don't want to give you guys too much too early. but we just want to give you guys the gist of it so you guys can have an understanding as to the impact that a candidate coming into power, the leader coming into power, can have an effect. Think of the president as the CEO. He is the CEO of the country. So the CEO, however he or she is performing, is usually how the company goes on track, right? So you just have to think of it like that. So if Biden or Trump is in power and whatever policies that they follow, whatever their party follows with them, I think that also affects a lot of distribution in the stock market in terms of where your money should be going, the companies you should prospect in, how to properly prospect companies too. Because another thing is, again, if Biden is supporting cannabis companies, you also want to look at how the cannabis companies have actually been performing in the years before, also just leading up to now. You just don't want to pick any random one because it's like a cannabis company, because at the end of the day, not every cannabis company has had a successful track record, and not everyone will. But you want to look at the right ones. That's where looking at Yahoo Finance, looking at a company's revenue stream over the past couple of years, looking at a company's management is important. You always want to look at how a company's management is doing. You don't want it to be a WeWork situation where the CEO is usually using the money that he's supposed to be making for the company on women and drugs. So I think that's just important to know. And also having a free cash flow. I think one of the companies I love that has a free cash flow is Apple. Apple always seems to have extra money on hand. That's why right now they didn't do too well with their new iPhone, but you hear they're coming out with new MacBooks. They're supposed to be announcing that next week. So just thinking of something like that, that's just important to note. So that's a way to kind of just prospect the company, look at how companies perform, and look at that company's management. Daniel, you have something.
I was just going to say that this is a lot of research to do, but at the end of the day, it's worth it. And you always have Danso Financial here to give you the top picks that we believe will be, profitable in the near and far future. So don't feel overwhelmed by the information presented to you. Information is power, as they say. So, this is only to empower you. And this is to help benefit your financial situation, because, I'm feeling pretty good personally about the outcome and how things will pan out. But, more importantly, I have the information provided that I know how to maneuver, depending on what the circumstances give us, because the important thing is to know how to respond to the to downturns and how to respond to upturns in the market. And if you have the provisional knowledge beforehand, then you have a bunker. You know how to kind of sway. As Charles mentioned, there's going to be a devaluation, most likely, of the dollar. So have some gold in the safe. Keep those provisional things in place so that there's nothing that it may surprise you, but it won't overwhelm you when it comes time for that.
Correct. Ramy?
Yeah. And I kind of said my piece earlier, man. Just make sure you're exposing yourself to the upside. Make sure you're banking on winners. They don't even have to be the winners of the elections, but just overall watch the trends of the country's moving towards legalization of, recreational marijuana. They're moving towards electric vehicles. They're moving towards heavy spending with a stimulus package for COVID, as well as for affordable health insurance for all. So all these things are major macroeconomic trends that you should be watching, following, and then thinking, how can I be a part of this? I personally am a big believer in electronic cars, and so I'm going to be constantly looking for what companies are developing the most research on that. Charles said it himself. I mean, we got all the tips of how to look for stocks for you, but at the end of the day, you got to look for what works for your income, your portfolio, your status. Just look for what works for you, but there's always a way to be exposed to and you can't win if you're not in it. So This whole episode was about the effect of the elections on the stock market, but the elections are just basically like a summary / Spark Notes version of what's been going on in the country for the last few years that people care about. All these elections do are put people in front of us that are going to talk about what's most important to us. Immigration, infrastructure, healthcare. Those are all things that are major factors that people care about. So it's going to be in play. Those are the kind of stocks you want to be invested in. Things that are in play, not something you haven't heard about in a long time. Expose yourself. Get in it to be in it to win it. So that's all I got.
Yeah, and just as the gentleman just mentioned again, it's on you guys. Whatever you guys feel is the best method for you to basically invest, do it. But definitely do your research. Make sure that you're following how the country is moving. I think that's important. That's how the stock market moves. If the country is more innovative, as Ramy mentioned, if it's through marijuana being legalized, through electric vehicles, I won't have to piggyback off him, but just giving the blueprint. That's how you basically follow the trends of a company. It's just seeing what the times are in right now and how that's how it's going to affect the companies to look at. But again, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Again, by the time you guys probably hear this, we hope, again, we don't know what Trump is going to do, but we hope that the president has been selected and the Senate and House have been selected. Hopefully it's the right individuals that can lead us in the right way, which is towards the future, as we mentioned. So again, thank you for tuning in. If you're tuning in from Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or our YouTube page at Danso Financial Group, thank you for tuning in. We're also on Instagram at Danso Financial. That's DANSO. Thank you for tuning in. Our next episode will cover intellectual property. We got a nice attorney. She's very versed in this world through trademark, patents, copyright. She's based out of Atlanta. ATL shout out. She will be on our podcast for next episode. So tune in for that. If you got a business, if your girl got a business, if your baby mom's got a business, I don't care who got a business. You tell her to come to this damn episode. All right. Bring everybody. This is brand protection is the next important thing. Again, hopefully by then we'll still be alive, because we all know these Trump supporters getting crazy out here. Anyway, thank you guys. Take care. We out of here.
Take care, everybody.